So with that, I'd like to just introduce Dr. Judith D'Amico. She would consider herself, I'm not putting words to make sure I say it right, but she is a tent-making missionary, right? And she has had experiences over many years with traditional church, missionary work, also in recent years really in a lot of development type of things. Many of you are interested or involved in development. I personally come from more the traditional missionary background, working with the national church, but there's definitely a place for seeing the gospel become power that brings change into a society. Amen. And so those of you involved in development, you have a very noble work as well. And how many of you know since January 12, 2010, we're all in development one way or another, just to try to get back to whatever normal was. So with that, I'd like to, Dr. Judith, please share some of your testimony with us. You want to hold that?
I came to Haiti in 1987 as a regular missionary. I was a missionary with a church, and what they asked me to do was to actually help them get involved in community health work. Because up to that point, missions had been mostly based in hospitals, and they're saying, no, we needed to go in another direction and do something in community base. On the way here, they sent me to France so I could learn a little French, which was one of the greatest blessings that God has done, because it's allowed me to function in a much wider purview here in Haiti. And while I was there, the Lord started giving me a vision of a small program for community health workers. And over a period of 2 years, the Lord put it together. And I can only say the Lord did it because there was, remember back then, it was pre-internet, it was pre-everything. And there was no way to find the resources he was telling me about. Like, we didn't have much medicine around the country at that time. And instead of using medicines, the Lord had talked to me about using medicinal plants, which everybody knows here. But medicinal plants is a two-edged sword. There are some that are very good, but they can also be very dangerous. And how the Lord led me to actually find an expert in medicinal plants in the middle of Haiti who actually put together a formulary, and we used that as the center of the program, or how the Lord actually found me a curriculum from East Africa that we translated and then was adopted and adapted to Haiti, and how we wrote a manual that was even where there is no doctor in Creole here, and all these things. So they were just small miracles of God, miracles of His provision. And the little team He gave me of just 4 people ended up actually doing the project. The Lord told me from the beginning, hands off, Judith. I have given you the vision. I'm going to bring you your people. You're to transfer the vision, and hands off. They must implement it, not you. If you implement it, you'll implement an American program and it'll do no good. You must implement a Haitian program. So it must be through these people. Well, one of the ladies I found out, who was actually my key teacher, she was an RN, absolutely detested missionaries because she had gone to a missionary school up in the north and had this terrible experience with lady nurse missionaries. And she was going to see what I was made out of. So for 18 months, she absolutely destroyed me. And as mentioned to Willie earlier, I'm an Italian American. If anybody knows Italian Americans, we have a little problem with temper. And it was a very quick understanding that I was not to lose my temper. I was not to say anything. I was to literally sit on my hands and my tongue for 18 months while this young lady learned. I couldn't tell her anything because she knew everything, even though she was about half my age. And it just went through the motions. And then the project matured, and I was finishing my term here. And one day, we're riding in the car, And she turns to me and she says, Dr. D'Amico, nous bien. And I go, really? Nous bien means we're good together. We're really friends. And I go, oh, really? And she said, yes. And she says, anytime you come back to Haiti, anywhere I am, you are welcome in my house. And I go, okay. And she says, I've been hard on you these last 18 months. I go, yes. And then she explained to me about the schooling, and she said, I believed in your vision, but I wasn't sure I could believe in you. But I believe in you now. And that was probably one of the hardest fights I've had in Haiti, to be able to put my own culture aside and my own values and say, no, the Lord has given me this clear direction and I have to follow it. Well, there was also problems, and some of you may have already experienced this, so I'm going to bring it up. That the enemy of our soul doesn't only plant people and enmity outside of the church. It can be inside the church. And it's often with other missionaries. And I experienced that in my work because some of the missionaries felt threatened that I was a physician. Some of them felt threatened because I wanted to turn the work over to Haitian people. And it took that church 65 years here in Haiti before it finally turned its work over to Haitian leadership. That's a sad story. But at least now we can say God has finally won the victory. But this was a point where I was about 25 years ahead of myself, and it was not turned over to Haitian leadership yet. And so I was experienced a lot of problems. And the week after I left, they closed my program down. The missionaries did. So this was in 1990. I left Haiti for 7 years and 7 days, and the Lord wanted to make sure that I noticed that it was 7 years and 7 days. And He brought me back to run one of the biggest health works here in Haiti called Hôpital Schweitzer. So it's a big health work in the middle of the country in the Atsubunia Valley. 600 square miles, 250,000 population. We had 11 health sites and a 180-bed hospital. It was huge, plus community development. So He brought me back to do that. And but that wasn't really what He wanted me to do. What He wanted me to do was to continue to do what He showed me to do with Phoebe, which was Isaiah 61, and I'll just read you a couple of the verses. Isaiah, at the beginning, the part that Jesus read in his hometown. He says, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to bring good news to the afflicted. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to captives and freedom to prisoners, to proclaim the favorable year of the Lord and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn, to grant those who mourn in Zion, giving them a garland instead of ashes, the oil of gladness instead of mourning, the mantle of praise instead of a spirit of fainting, so that they will be called oaks of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, that He may be glorified. They will rebuild the ancient ruins. They will raise up the former devastations, and they will repair the ruined cities, the desolations of many generations. And He made it very clear to me, I wasn't to be involved. This was to be Haitian people. My job was to raise up the leaders, to mentor them, to encourage them, and that they turn and do the work. And that's what happened with Phoebe. I had no news of Phoebe, and then in 2000, so about 10 years after I left Haiti, a friend of mine called me who was doing a major evaluation of this. Phoebe was planted in an extremely remote area of the southeast, around a town called Chot. And she said, Judith, do you think your program is still working? And I go, well, there's no way it can be working. I mean, there was no money. My staff was fired. How could it still be working? She said, well, but in some of this area here, we have a distinctive difference in the health indicators than the rest. And I go, no, I doubt it. 7 years after that, I saw the district superintendent, who governed that area, and it's the same district superintendent who had asked me to actually plant Phoebe in this area. And we were talking about something else, and at the end of the conversation, he said, "You know Phoebe's still going on, don't you?" And I go, "What?" And he said, "I couldn't let it die. I didn't care what everybody else said." He used his own funds and kept it going. And it's still going on now, 23 years later, without any outside help whatsoever, not either technical or financial. What they did was, after we finished our Phoebe part, they got hold of what had just come out, Where There Is No Doctor in Haitian Creole, and they used that to move on. So it's just to say to you that our job is to help these guys, but we're not here to replace them. We're here to help them. You know, they're the ones that have to lead Haiti, not us, right? And our job is to come in beside. And I want to tell you this one story I've told Dan a couple times. This was, I was here maybe 6 months, and I went to the meeting of the Haitian Health Agriculture Fellowship. It doesn't exist anymore, but back then it was very big. And the majority of the missionaries at that time were doing some sort of development. So we had maybe a room full of 200 or 300 missionaries, but almost no Haitian people. It was all just missionaries. And there was a round table they were going to have, and they were up on the platform. There were 5 or 6 people, and they had kind of a couple token Haitian people there. One of them is this little man, stands about 5 feet, named Chevan Jean. And when it was his turn, he stood up and he got up from the table, and he came over to the front of the platform, and he pointed his finger out at us like this, and he said, "You missionaries," he said, "you're one of 3 types." He said, "You're either a destructeur, a bâtisseur, or a catalyseur. So either you're a destroyer, a builder, or a catalyst." And then he went on to describe it. And basically, a destroyer is what we know as a colonialist. Someone who comes in and they just take over. They make their own little kingdom in Haiti, and we've all seen that from time to time. The builder, which I probably would tell you is the most common, is someone who comes in, their heart breaks over what they're seeing around them, and they say, "Oh, you poor people, we're going to build you a health center. So just wait, we're going to go back, we're going to raise the funds, we'll build you a health center, and we'll bring people back to help you." So they raise the funds, and they come back, and they build this nice building. They bring in the doctors and the nurses and all the technical people, and maybe the Haitian people get to be the cleaners, you know, but it's mostly an imported group. And they keep working until the funds run out. Then they have a big ceremony, and like you said, 6 months before, they have a big ceremony, and they turn the key of the health center over to the Haitian people, and they go away and say, "We'll be back." And 2 or 3 years later, they come back to see how their health center is doing, and it's a closed building. Because they never had the turnover of the work to the people. It had been, the people looked at that as their work, and so they were waiting for them to come back to do their work. And then he said the third group is the catalyseur, the catalyst. Someone who comes and says, "Okay, I've got a little bit of knowledge or a little bit of something, and I'm willing to walk along with you and help you do it." And that's really what our charge is that one. Whether it's inside the church, or it's in the community, or sometimes like what I do is I'm up influencing the higher leadership in Haiti. Wherever we are, that's it. We turn it over. We turn it over from the beginning. But it's a process. Because just like, for instance, take an example of someone, say you're an ébéniste, okay, you're a furniture maker. And this young person in your community comes to you and says, "Pastor, I want you to teach me how to be an ébéniste like you." And you go, "Okay, I'll take you on." Well, you're going to start showing him little things, right? And say, "Okay, I want you to cut this piece of wood for me." And then, okay, later on you let him shape it a little bit or sand it a little bit. You teach them a little bit at a time. And in a sense, leadership is that too. Some people are already almost there. They already know how to cut. They already know how to put things together. They already know how to mold and shape. But you're going to show them maybe that fine-tuning, that very special thing. And it's the same with us. When we do leadership, it's just a matter of seeing where the people are, and you just help them to come to the next step, whatever that is, right? But always with the idea that we're just there as the catalyst. We're there to walk alongside. We're not to be in charge. There are times you're going to have to be. And that's where I'm going to bring you to my second big project here. Now, in the middle, I did 800 different community development projects here. So I have an enormous experience, not just in health. I've done everything. So you want to find out what not to do, I can tell you. What to do is a little more difficult. I can tell you what not to do.
Thank you.
And so I have an enormous experience in development here, all over the country. And then when I'm laying down under my side of my boss's desk during the earthquake, the Lord, and I'm yelling out, Jesus! And he says, this is not your trial. This is what he said to me. This is not your trial. You're here to help. That's how he put it to me. And he told me what I was to do in the immediate. And then he started giving me the idea of what he wanted me to do long term. And he started giving me the idea of a project we call Rebati Kaila, rebuild the house. And Rebati Kaila, we're working up on the top of the mountain where I live, in Wildy's hometown, in Fort Jacques area. But the real point of Rebati Kaila is not to rebuild houses, but to rebuild people. To rebuild people in the old ways of their culture.
Pause 1 second. Could I have you sit here more in the middle? We'll just switch right now so these guys can hear a little bit. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
So the whole point of Rebati Kaila is not so much to build houses. It's that's the entry point. The real reason is to help people to return to the old ways that were so helpful to them, like the idea of combit or coller les épaules. And if you know about Haiti, you know that one of the biggest problems we face here is a problem of mistrust. People will not trust each other. I can tell you a story when I was running Hôpital Albert Schweitzer, where someone was trying to put up an illegal electrical connection. And so I went to stop them. And after they swore at me for about 20 or 30 minutes, they calmed down a little bit. And there was a group of about 5 or 6 people, and I said to them, listen, why are you doing this? Why don't you come to me, you guys get together, think of something that you'd like to do, some little project, come and talk to me about it, and I'll see if I can help you do it. That you could make a little bit of money and not do this kind of stuff that's illegal, and you could kill yourselves. And they looked at me and they laughed. And they said, but Dr. Judith, you don't understand. We can't work together. I said, you're about to kill yourself putting up an illegal priest, and you tell me you can't work together. And they go, no, we don't trust each other. And this is really true. There's a real big lack of trust, and it's getting worse. If any of you have looked over time, it's getting worse. And this was one of the things we said we want to get rid of, is we want to bring people back. And that's what we saw after the earthquake, didn't we? Is that people were doing the old ways again, of working together, how they set up in the camps, how they would have common cooking pots. How people would literally, it was the Haitian people who removed the majority of the people from under the rubble, wasn't it? And people who didn't even know each other would go and work for days to get one person out. And that's Haiti. That's the real culture that's here. That's the real part of the people that now has been so covered over with this other stuff. So we said, let's go to somewhere that there's still a little bit of that left, which was up in this old community. And let's see what we can do by reminding people of that. Because in my area, I live just a little farther down the mountain. I live in La Boudouse. It's about a third of the way down from where we work. But you know that most of the people under 35 have never, ever, ever experienced a combit in my area.
Yep.
But
find that for
a combit is like what we used to do in the pioneer days in the United States, where all the pioneers would get together and they would do something together, plow a field or put up a barn or whatever. And that's the whole concept of Combite. And it's very common here, especially if you go out in the outer areas, you'll still see Combite. But it's being lost. And they said, no, let's bring this back. I'm not introducing Americana here. I'm reminding people of their roots and the beautiful things in the roots. And I'll just tell you, with Rebatikala, I just want to give you one story from Rebatikala. We ended up doing a house that wasn't a rebuild. It was a new build. And we were going to use the excuse that the main house, the mama's house, had fallen down. So we say, okay, we're going to rebuild it on this other lot, which was the son's lot. And he had most of the foundation. But the lot was too big. We were only going to build 40 square meters, which is about 415 square feet. We were going to build a house that big. And so we said, we can only build so much, and then we'll have to leave it. Well, the way everything goes, and in Haiti, everything is dégagé. It's kind of wing it. So the house got built, but the front walls didn't get built. But we kept seeing the community coming because they so loved this family. And this man had been saying, he said, I have no money to put up this house. He had worked for one of the main missionary groups that were putting up houses in the area. But he quit because the quality of the work wasn't good. And he didn't want to do that to his people. And they had even said they would build his house for him. And he said, no, it's inferior. I don't want it on my land. So he quit and had no job for 5 years. Just kind of working a little bit here and there, dégagé. And he had no job for 5 years. But then the Lord laid on all of our hearts is that this man, who's part of our executive committee, he has to have a house. We have to build this house for him, even though it didn't fit the criteria. But nobody could say no. We all knew, we were all being moved by God, that we had to build it. As we were building this, the whole neighborhood came. Someone to come for an hour, bring a little bit of water, move a little sand, help hand off block, bring a little food to feed the workers, whatever, just a little contribution, just little. But it was Combite. But we couldn't finish the house, like I said, because it was too big and we were already well over budget. And we had to leave it without the front walls. The other interesting part is that other organizations were building in the area. One was rebuilding actually the mother's house. And the engineer, when he would come, he didn't want to go over to his work. He says, oh, this is terrible. He made them take down the walls 3 times. And he would spend the whole afternoon at our place, right, walking distance, spend the whole afternoon there and say, this is the way it's supposed to be done. This is right. And we had that happen a few times where different engineers would come and stop at our work because they would see and they'd see the quality of it, which again is our mark, right, as Christians, is that we have to do things of quality because that's how Jesus is of quality. And so we did. And about 3 weeks after we finished our part of the house, this gentleman also was a plumber. And one of his neighbors called him late at night and said, I have a problem. Can you come right now? And he said, okay. So he came and he fixed the problem. And while he was there, the neighbor said, hey, I understand you have a house. And he goes, yes. And he said, I'd like to come see it. And he said, of course. And so the next morning the man comes, and this man obviously was fairly well-to-do. And he came in and he noticed that the 2 front walls weren't done. And he said, how much block are you going to need to finish those walls? And he had just done the calculations with one of the masons to figure it out. And he said, well, I'm going to need about this much. And he says, I'll buy it for you. And he bought it. We had enough cement left over that the mason then put it up for free. Isn't that what this is about? Isn't it? It's just rebuilding what was already there. We're just clearing off the Haitian foundation, right? It's there, right? And Dan wanted me to show you something else. This is purely a God thing, right? This is not Judith. Okay, everybody understand that. Don't look at me and think that I'm some genius, because I'm not. This is a God idea. It's called a culture map. So basically, whoops, we need some stones. Basically, this is something the Lord gave me one morning in devotions right before the guys were coming. Because I've continued to work. We had to form a little association to have a legal presence in the country, and we have four executive committee members, and they can continue to come every 2 weeks. And this is what he had me do: was to draw a circle, and then kind of stole my thunder earlier. They tell you about the circle. One part, the yellow part, is everything that's positive in the culture. So we were going to look at Haitian culture. We said, okay, all over here, the yellow part is everything that's positive. The blue part in the middle will be neutral things. For instance, every culture has certain colors it likes. Well, color is a neutral thing, you know. So we talked about things that could be neutral. And then over here, in the rose color, are the things that are negative about the culture, that can cause problems that are not of God. And so I gave them little stickies, and I said, basically, take your culture apart. And of course, this was new to all of them. They had never done any kind of what we would call, this is basically a values clarification exercise. They had never done anything like this, but they did really well. And there's a couple in here that are mine, but most of these are these four gods. And they laid out different aspects of the culture. And which is very, very common, too, is that they were able to pick up the more negative things more easily than the positive things. And I had to go back and then say, well, what about this in your culture that's so positive? Like the way Haitian people receive people so well. It's like you don't have a person that's not a friend, right? But someone you don't know. You make friends on the top, right? You know, you talk to people, right? You greet people in the neighborhood. You may not know them, but you say bonjour, right? And this is a beautiful part of Haitian culture. And so we talked about some of these things that are very, very positive and maybe a little bit unique here. And then the things that are kind of neutral, you know, like I said, you know, colors or maybe certain foods that people prefer, the way we prefer to cook, these kind of things that are just neutral, doesn't have a cultural value, doesn't have a moral value to it. And then some of the negative things, and as you can see here, we had a lot of the negatives. One of the things that had happened is that we had 5 members of the executive committee when we started. And the one who actually was the strongest, the biggest leader, was not morally a sound person. His character was a problem. And so he saw this for just his personal advantage. What the Haitian people will say is souci blanc. So, you know, to take take from the white people. You know. And he did. And of course, I'm a little ignorant because I don't know an awful lot about construction, so I was a little bit out of my field. And a lot of things happened along the way. But finally, I had to take the lead and dismiss him from the group. And I had documented everything, so it was very clear. But as much as I would have liked the rest of the committee to discipline him themselves, they weren't at the point where they could do it. So I had to jump in. So I said to myself, after we finish the work, these guys need more. They need to grow more in their own leadership skills, because I don't want to ever have to do that again. The whole idea is for them to be in charge of this and for them to do everything, even the hard things like discipline. And so we started taking different things off of this list and started dealing with them, the things on the negative side here. one of the first things we had to deal with was the issue of forgiveness, because they didn't think I had forgiven this man because I would not let him in the work anymore. Because the thinking sometimes is forgive and forget. And I go, no, we can't forget because he broke our trust. So then we had to go through this whole idea of what forgiveness really is and the issue of trusting people again, that they're separate. We have to forgive, that's a mandate from God, but trusting's another thing. So we kind of talked through that, and they saw it, and it was wonderful. It was absolutely the most beautiful thing. They actually saw what we were talking about. And then we had to deal with another big one that's taken us many months to deal with, Je vais bouche bée.
Say it slowly and define it, please.
Je vais bouche bée. The eye see, but the mouth is mute. And I think if you've been in Haiti, even just a little bit of time, you've seen that, where the Haitian people will not speak up, right? But if they speak up, and this has happened to me a lot of times, that's why I get into a lot of trouble here, is because the Haitian people often will feel comfortable with me, and they'll come and tell me something, like in a major, like humanitarian work. They'll come and tell me, and then I have to tell the boss. And that's led to getting fired sometimes, because the Haitian people won't say anything. But that's je vais bouche bée. And, here I am, North American, and saying, oh, but, you're free. This is a free country, and you have to stand up for your rights. Not understanding what's behind rights here. And that not everybody has the same rights. And that if I ask somebody to stand up for something, it could put them in true physical danger. Where in the United States, we don't necessarily face that. But here we do. And so they had to educate me on that. And so this last year has been that piece, even though I've been here so long, that piece I didn't totally understand until this last year, about how there are some things that you guys can't do because it's too dangerous. But in partnership with someone like us, the foreigners, you can do, or as a group, you can do. And what I did, instead of focusing on partnership with me, is my job is to faire back, to get out of this. So I said, okay, how are you going to do this as you group of 4? And that's what we studied for many months to actually work on that, is how are you going to get out of je vais bouche bée? Because you're going to have to confront when there's a problem. How are you going to do that? And I'll tell you, this has been literally the most exciting thing that has ever happened to me in my entire life. And I'm not just talking about 26 years experience with Haitian people. This has been awesome to watch these guys go home, digest what we talk about, think it through, and come back with answers. And we watch them figure out how they could handle some of these really tough things they're going to have to confront as a group. They can't do it by themselves, but as a group they can. And it was just so exciting to watch it. If I were to bring those guys here today, you would see 4 guys. I mean, 3 of them are high school graduates. One only got to 6th grade, but he runs my house, and he does all my accounting in Quicken in 3 different currencies. And they're simple guys. But if you see how they have raised up to become such confident leaders, it is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. It is absolutely beautiful. And that's what this is, huh? We may never build another house, but that's not really what's important. What's important is to be able to take what, I think we were saying it earlier, you take the jewel and transfer that, right? You don't transfer the whole setting. Our setting's American. We can't transfer our setting. That doesn't work. But we can take that jewel out and transfer that, and that's what works. I can give you the jewel that worked in Webatu Kaila, and then you can use it. But you'll adapt it your way. You'll adapt it to your context. You'll adapt it to what you're doing, right? That's what it needs to be. Is we give you the jewel, but not the setting. You don't need the setting. You need the jewel. And I've done now 3 transfers of jewels. So the first was Rabati Kaila. This is the third. The second one I want to tell you about because it can be in a mixed model, and I want to just point that out. The second one, I was working for a major USAID project here, where we were doing the purchase, warehousing, and distribution of HIV/AIDS drugs and cholera drugs and other drugs for the entire country. And right after the earthquake, I had to go in and manage the warehouse. Now, again, I'm a doctor. What do I know about warehouses, right? And the warehouse had completely lost control of the stock. They had stock that had never been entered. That warehouse was about 9 months old. They had stock that had never been entered. They had stock that were entered completely wrong, and they had the same 6 different stock entered on the same code number. So I mean, it was complete disaster. But the Lord had been leading me, and He had been leading me to redo the software that managed the warehouse, even a couple months before the earthquake. And I had to work under the radar because my boss felt very threatened. So I couldn't tell him what I was doing. I had to kind of work under the radar, but not disrespectfully, not do anything that wasn't part of my job. No. But just kind of work under the radar a little bit. We did the architecture of the software, and then we put all those 450 separate items back into the warehouse stock, and redid the inventory along with it. I mean, it was an enormous job. But I handpicked a staff, all Haitian. And we had an expert come in from the software company who was also a world-class warehouser who spoke no French, no Creole, but he was great at charades. he could get a message across. He was absolutely the most amazing man. And so he taught the staff about how to run the software, the basic principles of warehousing, everything I couldn't. I had the system that the Lord had given me. I had the system down, but I didn't know how to do it. And he did it. He was here about 3 months. The guys ran it on their own. I said, this is your project. I'm just going to guide you. I'm not running this, you are. Because this has to be a Haitian warehouse, not an American one, or not a British one, Haitian. And so they did. They took the challenge. 6 months later, because my boss was giving me a lot of trouble, he was going to prove that I hadn't done a good job. So he brought in an international team to evaluate our warehouse. Now, this is a big warehouse we're talking about. And the guys came in. They were dumbfounded. And about 9 days later, they gave us a rating. They said, the highest rating that the warehouse this size can be is silver. And they said, you're 3 points short of the highest silver rating. And they said, you're missing signs and thermostats. 3 points. But it was Haitian run, not Judith run. It was Haitian run. And now that warehouse is holding the work together. It's holding the work together. And any Haitian can come in and learn it because it's Haitian, you see? Now that's something Judith can't do because I could try to be Haitian, but I can't make it. There's that essence that you guys can do that I can't do. And it's the same that has to happen in the church. It's the same that has to happen in the community development. We can walk with you. We can tell you what we know, right? We can be, as Chavan Jen said, a catalyst, but we can't do it. That's your job. That's your job, not mine. Okay? Don't lose that. Because without you, it doesn't work. I have 800 projects to show. It doesn't work. But with you taking the lead, we just transferring the vision that God gives us, but you taking the lead, then it'll work. And that's a church, that's a community development project, it doesn't matter. That's the principle. You are the oaks of righteousness, not us.
Thank you. Thank you, Judith. Okay. Wow.